Hey guys, good morning. It's Drew here. Today I want to talk about morals and money. All right, and I'm going to talk about this basically using two people to start with. Okay, I want to talk about Bernie Sanders, and I want to talk about Donald Trump. All right, because typically what most people would think is that Bernie Sanders is supposed to represent morality, and Donald Trump is supposed to represent what? Money. All right, but I'm doing this video to basically explain to you that there doesn't have to be a trade-off between the two. And most people who think that there is a trade-off between the two have a very limited understanding of life. Because let's just put it this way, okay? In my recent videos, where I'm kind of talking about Martin Shkreli and Bernie Sanders, and I'm talking about, I guess, the political landscape, what's going on, and things like that, I get comments from people that constantly tell me, Andrew, you have no morals. You're all about money. And this video is not necessarily to prove myself to any of you. It's not, because I don't need to do that. But I do want to have you understand that your understanding of morality is severely limited. Because you think that there has to be a trade-off between acquiring resources and morality, when the truth is that that doesn't have to exist. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but people who know me in my life, who know me in my life, know me to be a very, very, very kind person. I am dedicated, I am loyal to my friends and my family. When my father had back and neck surgery, I took 6 months off work just to be by his side, to focus on him, to give him my full attention. And those of you who know how hard I work know how difficult it is for me to say I'm not going to go to work. I mean, because me working and me earning is a very, very critical part of my, fiber of my being. So I have charities that I'm part of that I give much money to. I'm part of an organization that does $1 million in charity a day. I don't do the 1 million myself. I do my part. However, I made an effort to join this organization so I can impact my community. So my point in this video is that just because I am a businessman and just because I support capitalism and mixed market capitalism, it does not automatically mean that I am lacking in morality. And I would also like to say that just because you enter, quote unquote, public service, it's very funny that they call it public service, but just because you enter public service like Bernie Sanders, it doesn't mean that you are completely moral. In fact, what I find is that in public service, because you're really not beholden to anybody but the people who paid you to be there and the special interests, your likelihood of being immoral is a lot higher. Because in business, you have to provide a service that people like. You have to provide a product that people like and people can use at a price that they can afford. Unless, of course, you have the intervention of government and government contract. That's when things get a little fuzzy. When you have a collusion, when you have a collaboration between government and business, that's when things get a little fuzzy. Otherwise, if left to their own devices, business for the most part has to answer to consumers, because consumers are what provide the bottom line for businesses. So if consumers are willingly paying for your services and your goods and your products, that's good. If they're not, that's bad. And as a result, you have to improve. And that's why in the private sector there has been improvement upon improvement, because there's an incentive for it. So let's go back to Donald Trump and let's go back to Bernie Sanders, okay? Bernie Sanders is supposed to represent morality and Donald Trump is supposed to represent greed, right? But why is it that over the course of Donald Trump's life, he's given more to charity? Is it because he has more? Okay, so you can say it's because he has more. But is it just because he was born into wealth that he has more? No, because he expanded upon what he was born into. Listen, there was no Trump Tower, there was no 40 Wall Street, there was no Apprentice, there was no Art of the Deal, there was no Grand Hyatt, there was no Woolman Rink. Donald Trump had to do all these things. He had to engage in all these activities. Now, you're saying, okay, now you can say that he had greater opportunity, But why is it that he, with all the power and the access that he has, that Donald Trump has, why is it that he gives more to charity than Bernie Sanders if Bernie Sanders is more moral? You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't necessarily think that just because you make more money or just because you're doing well in life that you have to sacrifice your morality. It's a very convenient argument for people who are not successful to make, because it kind of removes the responsibility of progression from the person who's making that argument. It's like saying, you know, I didn't get first place because the person who did get first place is a mean person. I mean, how convenient is that? You know, why can't some people just look inside themselves and say, I didn't get first place because I wasn't a better runner, I wasn't a better swimmer, I wasn't a better businessman, I wasn't intelligent enough to get first place, I wasn't intelligent enough to get second place. Why can't people just look inside themselves and say those things? And then, you know, some people say to me, okay, well, you know, Drew, not everybody wants to be successful. And my response to that is like, okay, if you don't want to be successful, then what is this whole thing about? Why would you then support somebody that would take resources from one person and give them to another if you don't want to progress? You're lying to me. You're telling me you don't want to be successful, but you're also telling me that you want more resources. How does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. So, listen, at the end of the day, if you're just your job, if you're just a construction worker, you're just a computer programmer, you're just, you know, if you're just your job, maybe you don't have these moral and ethical dilemmas that businessmen may run into more often. Because more often than not, like I've said before in my past videos, if you're in business, you're going to come into contact with the government at some point. You're going to. I'm not even just talking about when you incorporate. I'm talking about when you actually start selling your services or your products to the public on a mass scale where you're making enough money. You're going to come into contact with the business. An attorney general is going to contact you. The Better Business Bureau the BBB is not part of the government, but they'll contact you, and then the attorney general does contact you. FTC may contact you. But the fact of the matter is that the more complex your life becomes, the more complex the question of morality is. Okay? It's easy for a bum construction worker who's not making that much money and who's not doing much and just does one job to say that Donald Trump is not a moral person, because Donald Trump is involved in so many different things that not everybody is going to be happy with the decisions that he makes. The way that you look at morality when it gets more complex is you look at your net. Like anything else, you look at your net. And I always find it funny how, like, a lot of the left, and especially this year, Bernie Sanders supporters, they love to get into the topic of morality. You know why? Because you can't really measure morality from an objective standpoint. It's always subjective. It's always based on the accuser's, you know, judgment of what morality is. You see, money you can measure, progress you can measure, you know, accumulation of resources you can measure. But anything that you can measure is annoying to them, because measurement means that you have to come down to some concrete facts. Something either is something or it isn't. But when you enter the world of morality and ethics, anything can be anything. Tomorrow, what's moral can be immoral. Tomorrow, what's ethical can be unethical, and vice versa. So it's like, this is a realm that they love to deal in because it's so vague and the lines are so blurred and they can be changed by just saying something and making people feel a certain way. Okay, well, in my videos and in what I like to address the people with in my videos, I don't like to deal in bullshit. I like to deal in concrete terms. Okay, so when you tell me that Bernie Sanders is more moral than Donald Trump, my next question is going to be, how do you measure that? Okay, and if you don't measure it in amount of money donated to charity or amount of good done, if you can't measure that, then it's like, how can you make such a conclusion? How can you say that Bernie, is it because he says things that you like? Is saying things that you like all of a sudden more moral than actually going out and doing things that benefit people's lives? You see, People always say, oh, well, he went bankrupt and he lost people money. Yeah, but in the long run, he made people more money than he lost people money. I mean, come on. So you guys got to think about things, and you got to look at things logically. I mean, especially if you're going to come on my channel and you want to discuss these topics, because I'm not going to enter your realm of nonsense where you get to change the rules at will because you feel a certain way. I have a lot of you telling me, I feel pity for you. Don't feel pity for me. Feel pity for yourself that, you're grown. A lot of you are grown. You're adults, and you still think like children. I can turn on the ethics and the morals whenever I want, but we're talking about politics here. We're talking about games of power. We're not talking about, who gives more candy to children and who takes more pictures with babies. We're talking about politics here. We're talking about a fight for resources. We're talking about games of power. And all these politicians, no matter how nice you think they are all entangled in the same game. That's all it is. They're all entangled in games for power, and they're trying to jockey for position to get the advantage over their adversaries. Period. So let me just conclude my thoughts. There is no major trade-off between morality and money. You can have both, okay? There doesn't need to be a trade-off between them. You can have both. You can make money and you can still be a good person, okay? You can be poor and you could be a bad person. You could be a poor and you could be a good person. It's about what you do in proportion to what you take in. If you're a good person, you're going to, for the most part, do good. But there are some times when you have to do bad. There's sometimes when you have to be an asshole. And that goes for every setting. Like, I don't believe that life is long enough for all of us to spend our lives turning the other cheek. And I'm completely 100% being authentic when I come to you and I say that. I believe that certain things need to be done. Certain things need to be handled a certain way. When somebody steps on your turf and wants to take everything that you've worked hard for, it's not time to be a nice guy anymore. It's time to fight for what you've earned, for the people that you love and you care about. And that's what it comes down to. It's not about a lack of morality. It's not about only caring about money. Life is more complex than that. It's not just as black and white as you guys make it seem. And that's all I got to say. If you have any comments, feel free to make them. Open forum. You guys have a wonderful day. Peace.